Hello, friends. Today I'm speaking with the one and only Mark Fisher. For those of you who don't know, Mark is one of my long-term best friends and my business partner in Mark Fisher Fitness and Business for Unicorns. And today we share our top 3 lessons learned from 2020. He shares his top 3, I share mine, and this conversation goes all over the place. We talk about things like the value of community. We talk about how important all the lessons are that we've learned from this year of COVID and what it's taught us about ourselves and our business. We also talk about specific things like what percentage most gyms should spend on their salary for their teams. And so if you want to dive into the finances, dive into a conversation about community, and reflect on lessons learned from 2020, then this is the episode for you. So keep listening. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Business for Unicorns podcast and happy holidays. I'm so excited because Mark and I are going to start bringing you some regular chats with the two of us, just us chatting about life, chatting about business. I hope you find them useful. And today's our first one. So get excited because I am. Let's welcome Mr. Fisher to the stage. Mr. Fisher, how the hell are you, my friend?
I am great. This is so futuristic. I like being futuristic.
It is so futuristic. And then we have to pretend like we haven't already been talking for 2 hours today.
I know. Good to see you.
What's your life like? So I want to cover a few things today. I want to talk a little bit about Business for Unicorns, how we're pivoting and changing things up a little bit in 2021, how, we're planning on changing up this podcast. Obviously, we're recording video for the first time. So surprise, right. Here's one change. I want to talk about that. And then I want to share some thoughts about things that we learned in 2020. I keep referring to it as like the COVID roller coaster. Yeah. And so maybe we'll both just kind of surprise each other and share maybe our top 3 lessons from the year and just see where that goes. How's that sound?
I like it. Awesome.
Yeah, let's do it. So maybe I'll get you to talk first. You want to talk a little bit about the changes we're making in Business for Unicorns next year and kind of a little bit of our thought process about why we're changing them?
Yes, I think, it's funnily enough, I think the reason we've made this change with Business for Unicorns is one of my big lessons of the year. So if it's okay if I layer them together.
Oh, wow. Okay. We're going to do a whole co-mingling. Okay. I'm before it.
If I were to sum it up, it's like do less to do more, do less to do more. And I think that part of the challenge for us, part of why this was, I think, I don't want to overstate it, but a little bit of a fraught decision to make is because we were not only walking away from parts of the business by deciding to focus specifically on established and aspiring training gym owners. We were walking away not only, frankly, from revenue and money, but we were walking away from people that we really cared about. And for those listening, they're not super familiar with Business for Unicorns. We had developed kind of like a mini niche in other industries. We had a whole crew of real estate people that really did our time management stuff. Certainly, both you and I, Michael, have a number of friendships with entrepreneurs, and we'll probably still do some more under the cover traditional consulting work for their companies. And also, you and I like variety. It was sort of interesting to be working in different industries and different spaces. But ultimately, I think the reason we made this call was to take our own medicine, which is that the more specific you are with who you're talking to, the more specific you can get with what their exact problems are and offer them the exact solutions that are going to help them.
Yeah, no, it's true. And, we had this decision didn't come lightly for us. We've been talking about this for a while. Since it started. And for all the reasons Mark mentioned, it's because we like working with different industries. And myself in particular, I think I particularly get a kick out of coaching people from different companies in different spaces. And so to choose to focus down and really niche on gym owners and aspiring gym owners was a hard choice, not because we don't love that space too, just because for the same reason for many of you, it's a hard choice, is when you focus your marketing and really niche down to a specific avatar, you're kind of not focusing as much on the other people you could be serving. And that feels like a loss. And so, we took time to process that. And now we're charging full speed ahead in 2021, really having Business for Unicorns serve, gym owners, training gym owners, aspiring training gym owners, and even this podcast, all the guests moving forward are going to be fitness folks. And I think in the past, I've only had a fraction of fitness folks in the past. So it's really going to be a pretty hard pivot, plus fun things like this, we're recording the video for it, which is fun. We also have changed our Unicorn Society group to have different levels for different people who are different places in the fitness industry. So I'm really stoked about the stuff we got going on. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super selfish. This ultimately was also me creating, to some extent, kind of the business and the podcast that like I wanted, because I'm such a nerd about the training gym space. And even from a content consumption perspective, so much of what I listen to in my own, it's like free time because it's work, because it's play. I don't know. They're both the same for me. Is specifically the actions, the strategies, the tactics, the things that you can apply with the gym, like Mark Fisher Fitness. Because as I've often said, jokingly / non-jokingly, Mark Fisher Fitness was really Business for Unicorn's first client, right? Particularly in the beginning, in many ways, like, yes, I was like your friend from high school, but like, and certainly it was a partnership from day one, but particularly in the beginning, there were just like so many things I just didn't know that we needed, like not only your operations chops, but also your, yeah, kind of coaching. Honestly, in the beginning, like a lot of it, I remember, like I just like
we
need your
wouldn't
help
have called it
figuring out.
that.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have called it that back then. But I think that's part of what our relationship was in the very beginning.
Yeah, even that, it's funny to think back, even that like first year, I remember I had so many hangups around, like, I remember particularly with like leadership and management, I didn't like know how to do it. And you had obviously done it before. So it's like helpful for you to be like, all right, well, people want to be told what winning is like. They want to be told what to do. So we'll start with that. I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, well, so before we move on to our things, I just want to say to this, our podcast audience, for those of you listening or now watching who are not in the fitness space, don't feel like you need to run away. you know,
Totally.
don't really need to run away. I mean, certainly some of the services we're offering at Business for Unicorns are not designed specifically for you. But Mark and I still do coaching. You're still welcome to come join us for one-on-one coaching. And this podcast, even if you're not in fitness, I think will be useful. If you're in a service-oriented space, listening to people who are excellent and crushing it in fitness will still be useful to you. So this is my quick plea to hang around, see if you like this new version, because I think there's still so many great things to learn.
Agreed.
Yeah. So, so wait, you already gave one of your lessons for the year, which was just do less, but better. I like that one. I guess one of mine for 2020, and there's been so many lessons personally, professionally, but the thing that immediately came to mind when we had this idea was just, and this is something I've relearned, this is not new information, but just that community is literally everything. And every investment you make as a service-oriented business in community gets paid back to you threefold, especially during a crisis. That this year I've seen at Business for Unicorns, the community rally around each other, and all of the people in our unicorn site and all of our clients support each other, share tips and ideas and cleaning supply solution ideas and ways to reopen and close and reopen and close. And many of them have said they wouldn't be able to get by without each other. And the same thing is true at MFF, that, we've spent nearly 10 years now investing in our community in New York City. And during this time, ninjas came up and showed out for us in ways that just blew our minds, by paying money when we were closed, by giving extra donations and paying a little extra every month because they knew we needed their help. And that's the kind of thing that we all have always thought, somewhat in theory, that investing in community will do. I'll speak for myself, that I've always thought, like, we're investing in community because we're going to be able to support each other in times of celebration and in times of crisis. And it works.
Yeah.
And that was just a really good lesson this year. It's like, oh yeah, we're really right about that.
Yeah, agreed. Strongly. And I think as people are listening to this, what I would encourage you is to think through something I know we talk about a lot, but can't kind of be overstated, is how are you facilitating friendship in your business?
Yep.
How are you facilitating community? So examples of things that we've done during COVID, which a lot of people know, is we had one long stretch where we did daily community events for months at a time. But to your point, we were also, I don't want to say cashing out because it make it sound like it was like a debit, but we were leveraging the fact that we had spent years and years and years building these businesses. I don't think that would have flown if we had not already invested so much like time and energy with people getting to know each other, right? So the simplest thing in the Mark Fisher Fitness universe, which every time I talk to a training gym owner, I'm like, please steal this, is just starting classes with a name game. Yeah, start the class somehow, maybe it's the end, but figure out a way for people to learn each other's name and learn one thing about each other. Because even to this day, where so much of our community is now virtual, the Homebody Facebook group has so much engagement to the point where it's a wonderful problem, but there are actually days, I must confess, it's difficult for me to really make sure, because I try to engage with everything, right? I try to make sure I at least give you like a heart, at least give you like a winky face or something, right? But there's so much activity. And a lot of it is coming through conversations, name games, inside jokes that start in the classes that then get brought into that other space.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I think we've given a lot of tips here that I think are so relevant, right? Things like handwritten cards make all the difference in the world. Things like events that are not about fitness. So,
Mhm.
most of our events that we did were were not fitness oriented. Some of them were nutrition, like a little cooking class here. I mean, but the biggest one that continues is Chris Crothers, one of our trainers, MFF, has done a dance party every Friday
Yeah.
since March or April. Right, I don't think he's missed any, and they attract hundreds of people, have raised money for charity, and has nothing to do with fitness. So I think those things that we've been trying to invest in over the years and have been preaching about as unicorns. I think you're right that they really have kind of paid off in a way, and that they brought people close enough that they felt supported by people that they just go to the gym with
Yeah.
during a crisis. I mean, that's pretty freaking cool.
You know what I want to get back to? It's not the right time now for obvious reasons, but the MFF Talks event.
Mm,
So, gentle listeners, one idea that Kieran and I have been toying with for a while now, and just we haven't had the bandwidth. So, I want to confess this. This is like a little bit opposite direction of less but better, because this is more and sort of kind of a ridiculous thing. But our thought was like, we should do like a TEDx talk, like an MFF like TEDx talk, and like
yeah,
bring in alumni trainers, bring in members of the community, and curate a conversation around something like community or whatever, right? And then essentially like bring together people to like kind of nerd out together in some topic that resonates with our community. Maybe it's time to revisit that in the virtual space. Probably not the first few months because of hardcore less but better right now. But that's the kind of thing that is interesting, because on the one hand, it might seem extraneous and it is difficult to quantify the real value that has, which we've learned in
yeah.
ways that are beautiful and challenging in the past year.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, but I think doing a virtual version of that might be in the cards for 2021 at some point.
I like it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let's go to number two. What's your number two lesson for 2020?
Oh
In
gosh.
no particular order, just
Yeah, number two lesson, and this one is like ridiculous and kind of embarrassing because Aaron's like, "Duh, you dumb dumb," but it's like you should market and sell your things. Like, learn how to market and sell your things. It's not rocket science. And what was really interesting about this past year, so as I have been like very candid with people, it's not like a mea culpa necessarily, but I think frankly, a lot of our success for several years was not because of our incredibly dialed in marketing playbook. It was almost like in spite. Like, we were so good at fulfillment. And on brand side, we were purple cows. So what we did was pretty memorable. So people were having great experiences. They would tell people about us, and it was different. It was different than other stuff. And that's marketing. That's fair. So we were definitely doing that well, but we didn't have a very we didn't really have any systems around how to really take somebody from opting in to a low barrier offer to following up with them to then having some sort of conversation with them where you make them another offer to make a more substantive commitment. That like was not a thing. And it really started to catch up with us about a year ago. And to our credit, we were like, okay, well, we should go learn how to do this. We could be doing this better. And we did. And it went great. And it was amazing. And the first few months of the year, we were off like a rocket. We were on way to break all our records. And then the world ended, and that was sad. That was disappointing. But the thing that was interesting to me, the big lesson about this year, was we just did the same strategy in the online space. So it was a different low barrier offer. We did 30-minute Zoom calls instead of in-person ones. The follow-up playbook stayed basically the same. The product we were selling is mostly an online class-based product. It's a different product we're selling, but the exact same playbook completely worked twice in a very predictable way. So I
Yeah.
think for me, that was, I think, just a really powerful example of like, wow, this is like kind of learnable stuff. So I would say that anybody out there that if you know the issue, if you know you're really great at what you do and fulfillment is not the issue, if your issue is acquisition, you just can't get new people to sign up for what you're doing, you can learn those skills. And what's great is they always work. Like the methods, the exact tactics might change, but the overall system for any service business really, but certainly in fitness, is like, it's always going to work. Just do the play, run the play.
Yeah, it's so funny. We didn't share these before we started talking about what our top three were. And literally the second thing I wrote down was identical. I actually wrote it. Mine's a little more negatively written, but what I wrote down was one of my lessons this year was almost every gym owner I've talked to has a messed up relationship with marketing and selling.
Weird.
It's just almost everyone I've talked to this year. And in part, it's because we've started focusing on it more. And then, I think you and I have more and more confidence about our ability to both do it
Yeah.
and teach it. And so, certainly my antenna have been up about, about how do people see this and how's it working or not working in their business. So I've maybe become a little more discerning for sure. But also, everyone that I talk to, that owns a gym didn't start a gym because they love marketing and selling.
Of course.
When the luck runs out, or the organic reach runs out, or you stop becoming the new kid on the block like we did, and you have to turn to some really solid marketing and selling strategies, it's a hard pivot for people to make. There's a lot of emotional baggage and imposter syndrome with having to sell yourself and put yourself out there in those kinds of conversations, and people feel sleazy doing it. There's so many layers to people's barriers in getting good at marketing and selling. And I know you and I are convinced of this, so I'm preaching to the choir here. But for our listeners, there's just no way around it. You're not going to continue having a long-term thriving fitness business unless you get comfortable and learn to embrace marketing and selling. It is new people in your business is just the oxygen the business breathes. And without the oxygen, you're just not going to last very long. And so it's just, it's one of those things that, has kind of reinvigorated some of my passion for doing the coaching and mentorship that we do, is because I now feel more confident helping people with this thing that is so hard for so many. And so I'll pick your brain on this. I know we have to move on in terms of time, but what are your thoughts on how people start to overcome those obstacles to not wanting to, or not knowing how to market and sell? What are the first few little baby steps?
Gosh, it's so hard, I think, because everyone is different. But something that I feel is worth acknowledging is, and I can't remember where I heard this from. I heard this from somebody. You're always going to not like things you're bad at.
Sure.
Part of the issue is you're bad at it when you start. And particularly when you're talking about things like marketing, and certainly sales, you might not be good at it like with an individual that's rejecting you. So you're going to be incentivized to avoid that pain and not get good at it. And I would encourage you to run in the opposite direction and decide that you're going to be good at that. Because one thing I will concede, part of the challenge that we know with a lot of the training owners we work with, both formally and informally, part of the issue is, I get it, there's only so many hours of the day. And based on where you are at your business, there's this kind of challenging valley where like you're kind of making enough money, sort of, but you're doing a lot of the training, so you don't have a lot of other bandwidth. You're nervous, understandably, about handing off your client to somebody else because maybe your fulfillment operations piece isn't dialed in. So you're nervous about, can I really give them the standards to create the experience we need? But somebody has to focus on the marketing and sales. At some point, somebody needs to do it. And I concede it's one of the challenges. It's really kind of like a microcosm of the same issue you see in the book E-Myth, which you've not read. You should please go read it. Everybody says you should read it, and they're correct. Which is that you get into this business because you like training, and if you want to be successful in this business, you have to ultimately like business. You have to ultimately love business, and business is not. The good news is a number of buckets, right? You have like finance, management, operations, fitness, you have marketing, you have sales, right? Those are probably the main buckets, and you can group them differently depending on what framework you're looking at. And then, of course, each of those buckets have a number of component parts that can further be broken down to. So I'm not looking to make this sound like it's super, super easy, but if you're somebody listening and you're like, okay, I know I need to do this, but I kind of can't get myself to do it, there's probably two approaches. If you can like find some way to link your studies and efforts there to the life you really want, and really identify it with the goals you have personally, your mission, the way you want to impact the world, that can be a helpful piece of it. And if you want to read a book on it, I know a book that we read, the entire MFF team read, was very valuable, is To Sell Is Human. Because it's possible also you have underlying mindset beliefs, you have underlying invisible scripts, if you will, that are preventing you from taking action, because even though mentally, consciously, you're trying to get better at it, part of you feels like it's shady, part of you doesn't want to do it, and it's preventing you from taking the action that has to happen to pay the price you need to pay to become who you most long to become.
Yeah. Well said, my friend. I agree. Yeah. I'll answer my own question and say two very similar things, which is one, I think people first just need a reframe of what selling and marketing means to them. That's it. And I think one of the things I think is so true is that people did get into the business because they want to help people. They want to coach and support and help people develop their lives and their bodies and their relationship to food and movement. And I think selling at its best is coaching. Right? Totally. Selling at its best is mentorship. And if you can really frame it for that way for yourself, and that the first and most challenging part of any coaching job is getting people to want to engage in the coaching. And the same thing is true in fitness. If you want to change their life by having them lose 10 pounds, gain more energy, whatever their outcomes are, your first job as a coach is to get them to commit to your process. And so the selling is really just, the first step in your path to helping people live their best life, And, I think that kind of reframe I've seen be somewhat helpful for people. And then the second thing, which is maybe a little more tactical, is spend time on it. There's a podcast episode I recorded with Luca Hosfar, which is coming up a few episodes from this, maybe after this, I'm not sure yet. And one of the things we talked about in there is, and he made this point so much more eloquently, is that, you know what you value by what you spend time on. Which, we talk about in Time Ninja all the time. And so if you say you value it, you say it's important to you to get more people in the business and to get, fresh people in there and to grow the business, spend time on it. Just literally put time on your calendar to spend on it. And that way you'll be kind of putting your efforts, putting your behaviors where your intentions and goals are. And I'll give that one that credit to Luca, which is something we talk about all the time, but he really, made it come to light for me. Yeah, cool. So number 3, that was the second one. I think we were both talking about sales, basically, to marketing. What's your third biggest lesson? Do you have another one?
Oh, I feel these are like really stupid because that one was like make more money, and the second one is like spend less money. So control your expenses. Get very clear on how much money you're spending, and importantly, what percentage of your money you're spending on what. Because oftentimes that is very sobering. And finance is similar to marketing sales, one of those things many people are not that interested in. But in fact, the math you need to do as a training gym owner, it's not actually that complicated. You do program designs, you do some math, you're doing percentages of 1 rep max. So it's not completely foreign. Obviously, money, once again, brings a lot of sometimes interesting invisible scripts about what you believe to be true about the world, your value, etc. But ultimately, part of your role, your responsibility as the owner of the business and the captain of the ship is to really have a sense of what is getting spent where. So a super actionable thing, it's like really simple to become my obsession of late, to perhaps the chagrin of some of our coworkers, is you just need to know, okay, out of every dollar that comes in a given month, what percentage is going towards profit, what percentage is going towards people, and what percentage is going towards non-people expenses. And you can decide for you what margins you want to live in. You hear as a generally accepted best practice for a training gym, a training studio, you can sometimes do up to 40% margins. You probably want 35, maybe 30, maybe 25% margins. But ultimately, if you are not clear on that, if you're scraping by on 5% margins every month, it's not the end of the world. Like, you want to fix that, because when a thing happens like COVID, which happens, you don't have any wiggle room. There's no breath. There's no room for error. So I would encourage you to, if you're not already doing this, if you can create, like, I would even create a spreadsheet and just like month over month track how much money came in total revenue and where did that money go. And I want to unpack one more little piece of this, because I've studied this stuff obsessively, and I'm like such a huge nerd. And I like, if you are listening and you also do fitness business stuff, I follow you. I read all of your stuff. I read everyone's things. And one thing I want to bring to your awareness that can sometimes be confusing is if you're making a distinction between profit and people expenses and non-people expenses, depending on the benchmark you're using or what framework you're looking at, some people that do coaching in the fitness business space will include owner pay and or perks in the profit, and others won't. So when I'm saying what I recommend, because we use broadly the profit first standards, and the profit first standards, the 35% of profit is further subdivided between some goes towards the owner pay and perks, some goes to pay for taxes at the end of the year, and then some is actually just profit, some of which you probably distribute to the owners, some of which you keep in the business and or invest in other things that are going to help the business grow. So another crude way of looking at it, you could even just do like a third profit, a third to all the other people, and then a third to non-people expenses.
Yeah.
So there's different ways of I think slicing that pie, and it's going to depend a little bit on your market, your values, your model. But if you know every month that you are paying yourself a below salary wage, that you couldn't hire somebody to come in and do what you're doing for the salary you're getting. And then on top of that, you're making like a 5-10% profit margin. I would encourage you, we need to fix that. And it's probably going to be some painful decisions, because yes, it's going to be marketing and sales. You got to grow that business, but it might also mean making some difficult decisions about what you're spending money on. And I don't take that lightly. That's like not a fun chat, particularly if you're having to make changes the way your staff is set up. But your role is to take care of the business first and foremost. You're not helping anybody in your team if either you can't pay your mortgage or your kids are hungry, or if you're so close raised within margin that a mild bump shuts down the whole business because you run out of cash and then you're done.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so smart. And I hope y'all are writing that down, because I think that, it's really so important to make sure you're on top of your expenses. Too many folks I talk to just have their head buried in the sand. They're afraid of it. Seems overwhelming, seems daunting. So just not paying attention to it. And I promise you, what Mark explained is just, one spreadsheet where you track those high level numbers. And frankly, this is not meant to sound condescending, but it really is no more complicated than probably 6th or 7th grade math.
Yeah.
We're not talking about complicated mathematics, even complicated spreadsheet algorithms. We're talking about simple subtraction, addition, multiplication. Like, there's not much to it. But the thing that I want to stress from what you just said, Fisher, was just the awareness is what is so valuable. Not that you're hitting every number exactly, but knowing exactly what your numbers are is the first step for most of you. I'll even say this, that I would say maybe like a third of the people that I've ever worked with in Business for Unicorns that have run into issues where their expenses were not panning out. They just couldn't get to those numbers. About a third of them just has signed the wrong lease.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And that's also become painfully clear during COVID. So that's maybe a topic for another day, but I want to throw that out there too. Yeah, a lot of it's the people. People's the thing we spend the most on. And some portion of you listening, and I hope it's not you, even if it is, you can work through it. But, we make or break our profit margin often at the lease signing. And so often people just sign the wrong lease. And you're just not going to match the kind of revenue you need to make that lease make sense, which is tough. But
that's real tough.
Yeah, it's a topic for another day. But I'll give you my third before we close things up, because we can keep talking about that one, I'm sure. My third was this, and this is probably a lesson we've known, but I think I relearned this year as things have changed, is that what it takes for you to get from A to B is often the thing that holds you back when you want to go from B to C. Right? It's so hard. And, and we're still learning this lesson. We feel like we've been hitting our head up against a ceiling at MFF for a handful of years now. And, oftentimes, our mantra has proved true time and time again, is that when you're hitting your head against a ceiling, often the bottleneck to the growth in any business like ours is the owner. It's us. It's our lack of ability to figure out how to replace ourselves in a meaningful way, how to delegate leadership, how to delegate responsibility, and this, same thing is true of Business for Unicorns. We're going to keep trying to grow Business for Unicorns moving forward. And what got us here is not the same stuff that's going to get us to the next thing. For example, we've talked a ton about I do a lot of the coaching and everyday mentorship. I'm in the business doing a lot of the implementation every day. And that's got us here. We've been doing this for 3 years. It's been a blast. We've had lots of success. And there's no way we can grow to the next place if that stays the same. And every time I relearn this lesson, it still just feels like a kind of a bitter pill, because I personally speak for myself. I just get so attached to my role. I get so attached to the value I'm adding, that changing that up is very vulnerable for me. Like the idea that, okay, I have to teach someone else to do coaching and mentorship is hard. I've been doing it for so many hours, for so many years, that giving that up is tough. And I know that I'm totally in the way of growing if I can't. And so anyway, I share that one just because we've known that. And I've shared the story a million times about how early on, my first thing when we first started MFF was I wanted to not clean the floors anymore. So we found someone to do that. I wanted to not sit at the front desk anymore. So we found someone to do that. I wanted to not, do X, Y. So I learned it early on, but that lesson just keeps getting harder for me to learn as I have to give up more and change more about myself. So anyway, that's something that I kind of keep relearning. I know you've been thinking a lot about it too.
So much about it. You know what I was thinking about the other day? Actually, this is the only time I ever mopped MFF was after we used to have parties in MFF.
Yeah.
which I should talk about on the podcast. We used to have like really parties. I mean, we used to like, people would go for it. So I can remember like being like hungover, like still drunk next morning, like mopping the clubhouse. Don't do that, by the way. Terrible idea, but we did. It was a lot of fun. So, and that actually
Well,
relates.
I was going to say the one that I remember the mopping for was we did the what's that called? Twister. We had those twister boards on the floor. We were peeling up twister boards that we taped down and mopping at like 4 a.m. Yeah.
We used to just like go across the street and just to get as many booze bottles as we carried, like put them on a table. We're like, everybody, let's hang out. But the thing that's interesting that I think that is reflected, the fact that I never mopped MFF is is a reflection of the, I don't want to say like uniqueness, because I don't make it sound like it's like super special, but it is unusual, our path. What was unusual about our path was we basically flew right to nearly $4 million. Very unusual. And we were doing that, when we had kind of one space, right? So like, that's like kind of unheard of, right? And that is awesome, but also presented some massive challenges. And the issue was we flew kind of right to there and then have kind of been stuck there for a while. And I now think I see the path. Okay, here's how we go forward. Now, as a student of business, something that you might have run into that I've been thinking a lot about recently is and I can't, once again, I'm bad at giving credit. This was not my idea. There is a theory of business that essentially posits that everything falls apart at 3s and 10s. So running your business at $100,000 is not how you get to $300,000. Then $300,000 is not how you get to $1 million, and on and on and on. So the average fitness studio in America, the average training gym, I believe makes around $360,000. So what that leads me to believe is
gross revenue on the year.
Gross revenue on the year, yeah. So the average training gym gets kind of stuck around $300,000 and doesn't know the skills how to get to 1 million. And if you get to 1 million, then you're stuck there. It's very hard to get to 3 million. So to our credit, but as I'll say in a moment, was a limitation, we literally went right to like 3 million, Keeler, you at least had some jobs before. I never even had a job. So like, I just like read books, never had a job. I was like, serving like hot dogs in a blanket to the masses of the universe at Citigroup while I was like hustling, playing pretend and singing, or like teaching people how to deadlift. So on the one hand, it was amazing that we did that, but it makes sense in retrospect now, like, oh, and for me, again, this is like another big discovery this year was being like, oh, because like we got so good at the things that were required to run a $3 million business. I'll speak for myself. I just couldn't really figure out or visualize how we got to the 10 million. And in retrospect, I see very clearly it was like all my fault, because even though we did a lot of the base things well that you need to get from 300K to a million to 3 million, I think we did a fair amount of delegating because we didn't want to mop, to get people to run, to be clear standards, to develop some managers. What I don't think I did a great job in retrospect was allowing space to mentor other people in the business so they could really think like leaders and think creatively. I still have to like fight myself to not come in and be like, all right, I not only thought of the big deal, but I thought of how it's going to happen. Here's where the operations are.
Yeah.
And again, that got us here, but that is absolutely the thing that I think has been a chokehold for us. And I am personally committed to figuring out how not to do that, so we can grow.
Yeah, I think we're both on the same page there. And I think, it's one thing to delegate tasks. It's another thing to delegate decision making. And I think anyone can learn how to delegate tasks with some simple tips and practice. Delegating leadership and decision making and management is harder. And it's that next layer that I know that, we both have opportunity to grow in. And this, I'm excited for it. It's a great new challenge, and it's going to be uncomfortable, but that's we both know the path to the path where we want to go is through a lot of discomfort.
What we signed up for.
All right. Well, I know we're scrunched for time today, but friends, I'm gonna have Mark back. I think we decided like every other week. Is that what we decided?
We're gonna do a little bonus episode, a little snack pack.
Every other week, we're going to add a second episode of Mark and I just chatting about whatever the heck we're going to chat about each week. And next time I have you back, I have a new final 5 questions. So I'm going to make a note myself. I have a new final 5. I'm going to have you answer them when we come back for our next episode in 2 weeks. Any final parting words? Given this is coming out end of December, any final call to action for 2021?
Gosh, I just feel like I learned like 5 times as much of this year than my entire year combined to it. And I'm just so desperate to share that with all of you. And what I would invite listeners to do, in addition to subscribing, in addition to give us good rating, all that good stuff, I would also invite you to shoot us an email at michael@businessforunicorns.com or mark@businessforunicorns.com with any questions you have, because our intention behind these bonus snack pack episodes are to be real candid. So I hope you got like a little little taste of that. This no holds bar, we're very candid people about all of things. We really want to know what you might want to know about the inner workings of Mark Fisher Fitness. Certainly, we're happy to share all the things we're seeing work with our clients in the Unicorn Society. We work with Business for Unicorns, but my dream and my vision for this is that you really get a sense of what it's like with not people that are up on the hill that have got it all figured out and like, oh, you need to do it like this thing. But these are, real human beings figuring out. Admittedly, I realize, MFF's kind of like a different place than a lot of the traditional fitness businesses, but I believe that a lot of things we're learning will still be applicable, and we are happy to be totally transparent about what's going on.
Yeah, for real. We'll talk about anything. We'll talk about anything. So yeah,
try it.
Yeah, try and find something that's taboo. That's your challenge, audience. But email us.
Openness on this personality trait.
Email us, mark@businessforunicorns.com, michael@businessforunicorns.com, and ask us questions. We'll totally answer them, and we'll get more formalized about this as we continue. Also, follow us on Instagram. You can ask us questions there, reach out there. I'm happy to do that. But thanks, dude. Thanks for doing this. I'm so excited. We're going to be tackling this more in 2021.
Yeah, tax.
Yeah, go enjoy the rest of your day.
Well,
bye.
Bye.